is business, user, and technical requirements. So, requirements refer and can include the specifics of a system, what the organization and/or users' needs for the system are. Requirements are the technical makeup of a system or what technologically is required in order to use the system. For our purposes, let's say requirements are defined as details that explain what a system can do and how it should function. So example, the selection committee of a hospital is looking to purchase and implement an evidence-based order set software. So a system that will incorporate the most current and best scientific evidence into creating the best order sets for patient care. So I want to show you my template for this software specification. It was designed to help the organization at a hospital prioritize their specifications and document their needs for this evidence-based order set system. I'm going to share my screen with you as soon as and thank you for your patience. Just bear with me. I want to get the template that has not been completed. And I want to make sure that you can also see it. So let's share that with you. Hopefully that's at a good enough resolution. So this was prioritization of needs and specifications for an order set application. And one of the first items was the hospital was requesting an encyclopedia of order set content that they could pick and choose from, taking what their hospital wanted to use and discarding the rest. The next specification, need, or requirement was that the order set content be based on acceptable practice standards, guidelines, and protocols. That basically it'd be evidence-based. Next requirement was a way to interface, communicate, transmit the order sets from the vendor to the hospital's EMR, whether that EMR was a Meditech product, an Epic, McKesson, Siemens, or a Cerner EMR. Next specification for this hospital was their question about how often updates and changes to the evidence would be communicated to the hospital. Next requirement was the question of how this product would facilitate or assist them with order set creation, review, revision, and communication within and throughout their organization. So these were the steps in the process for order set production: creation, review, revision, and communication. And they felt that those steps, it needed to be clear how those steps would be followed with this using this vendor product. An additional question was, did the vendor provide project support as well as training on the application? And then there's room for additional questions. On the right-hand side, in addition to the specifications and the needs of the client, the customer, whether that be a hospital or a physician practice, was an example of current state, so how the organization worked, functioned currently, and then the ideal, what the state would look like, what the status would look like once this order set product was in place. So the vendor needed to provide a detailed description of how the current state would be changed or impacted, and of course for the better, for the positive, by the implementation of this product. And when I show you the completed template, you'll see what I'm talking about. By the way, also these documents, these files are on the campus site under the week 2 discussion. And so let's go back to stop sharing. And let's continue to talk about, so you've seen the template. So, excuse me, requirements are also how a system will meet the needs of an organization and the needs of the system users. So requirements may have to meet more than one set of needs, right? The needs may have to be prioritized accordingly. Here's an example. You don't want a system that cannot be selected, that conflicts with the needs of the hospital to stay within budget. You don't want a system that keeps the hospital within budget but doesn't meet the end user's needs for quality of care or patient safety. Those are conflicting requirements or needs. An organization's requirements for an electronic medical record may include, it has to contribute to improve patient care. It has to improve quality. It has to be certified and compliant with meaningful use. Those are additional requirements for a system. Also, requirements, needs, and specifications can be used interchangeably. So let's go to the other side. Let's go to the template. No, hold off going to the template. Hold on just a minute. So I'm going to continue with the description, definition of requirements. Requirements may describe technical specifics or describe from a technical perspective how business and end users' needs will be met, how needs will be addressed. System requirements may include both hardware, processing, that's processing power, that can be memory, that can be storage, and also software specifications. So will it run on a web browser? Does it contain clinical decision support? Does it support, is it HIPAA compliant? Does it contain a database repository, etc.? Those are all specifications and requirements. So processes that include system, business, user. I think I did skip. Let me go back. I want to go back to the completed template. Bear with me and show you what it looks like completed as soon as I can pull it up. And I want you to see the difference in this. There we go. Oh, there it is. Again, thank you for your patience and for bearing with me on this. Okay. Hopefully it's big enough so that you get the resolution. So there we go. Okay. So here it is. Here's the template, the specification prioritization of needs completed. So this vendor, the requirement was an encyclopedia of order set content that they could pick and choose from, taking what they wanted to use and discarding the rest. And the response from the vendor was that they had over 400 evidence-based best practice order sets that could be used as clinical resources. All their order sets had incorporated real-world clinical feedback, and they had attached a list of their current order sets with this specification document. So in addition to the master repository, all organizations have access to the order sets and to the network. The network contains all the order sets and clinical use by members. If I remember correctly, this allowed all of this order set vendors' clients to have access to other hospitals' order sets so they could see what a hospital of similar size and geographical area was doing in relationship to evidence-based order sets. So it sort of helped organizations not reinvent the wheel. Next specification was that order set content be based on acceptable practice standards, guidelines, and protocols. And the vendor's response was all order sets in the master repository are evidence-based and best practice. The master repository is developed by utilizing the expertise of their network. Excuse me. And then additionally, if you'll remember before, the hospital wanted a way to interface or communicate, transmit the order sets from the vendor to the hospital. And it was interesting that this particular order set vendor did not have that capability. And they documented that, but they said they would have it. They expected to have the functionality within the next 6 months. So, excuse me. Then the next requirement from the hospital was that they wanted to know how often the evidence was updated or communicated to the hospital. And so the vendor's reply was changes to the evidence are communicated in 3 ways: on a monthly newsletter, so at least monthly. And they were also pushed out per the project's administrator via a bulletin board, and changes are marked in our master repository. So remember on the right-hand side when I said a lot of times it's really helpful for the client, the hospital, the physician practice office, to really see what the ideal will look like. They present the vendor with the current state, what the environment looks like without this software, without this application, and then it's the vendor's job to help them, realize their ideal. So in this case, the clinicians, the documentation excuse me, reads that the clinicians are disengaged from order sets. Many physicians do not see the value of order sets, but that their ideal, what they wanted to be able to achieve, what the hospital wanted to be able to achieve once post implementation of the order sets, was that order sets become an integral part of every clinician's practice and are used for all hospital admissions and transitions of care, and that significant development during a patient's hospital stay. I know there was another one where they said they wanted order set life cycle go from being a hindrance to a help for clinicians. So basically, as I said, this document gives the vendor an idea of what current state is, and it gives the vendor of what the client, the hospital, would like to achieve as the ideal. So incorporating those needs or requirements into an ideal state. So let's go back. Let's stop sharing. And let's talk about the relationship of requirements and specifics to a process. So processes that include system, business, users, system and technical requirements and needs and specifications are the RFI and the RFP. The difference between an RFI, a request for information, and an RFP. Basically, a request for proposal is usually a formal request by the customer, the hospital, or the doctor's practice, or the healthcare organizations that says that the vendor provide a report, requests that the vendor provide a report detailing how the vendor proposes to meet the needs or requirements of the customer. So an RFP comes from a hospital to an EMR vendor, let's say, saying, how do you propose to meet our needs, our request for an electronic medical record, or an order entry system, or a lab information system, etc. A RFP may include the software package, the proposed cost, estimated length of time that the project will take, and resources that the vendor will provide, etc. A request for information is just that. It's an organization or a team has a basic idea of what it is they want and the problem that they want the software vendor to solve. And the organization or a selection committee is looking for additional information on the vendor product. That let's use my example, the specification document I showed you. So they're looking for additional information on the vendor product, or information to compare more than one vendor, compare apples to apples, apples to oranges, in order to see which product will provide the best solution to the problem, or which software will meet the majority of their needs. So basically, to wrap up, that is a request for a proposal. An RFP is a request that the vendor provide a formal and detailed proposal as to how the vendor will meet the organization's needs, how the vendor will solve the organization's problems or issues. So sorry. So to wrap it up, we've covered business, user, technical requirements, and we've made a connection with those requirements to the RFP and to the request for information. So talk to you next week.